Welcome everybody. Today's topic is product owner in test. You may be all be curious. So let me get started. And it has only 49 slides from 60. So let's talk a little bit about we already have a product owner who barely looks at the product. We have a scrum master who do not know to build anything, let alone software. And then we have an amazing engineering team. I love my developers, all of them, every time. Amazing engineering team that know how to build amazing products, but they're limited to building stuff in bits and pieces. And now I'm trying to put a new name on a QA tester. So that we can come out of the shadows, because most Agile frameworks, they don't recognize testing as a part of the framework. No, wait for it. Let's talk about testing. Many of us loosely use the term testing. Know this guy? I actually like him. I still like him. He's adorable. So he went on to win Tour de France 7 times. And every time they checked him for, performance enhancement drugs and stuff like that. And every time, it came back negative. But did they really test him? They didn't. They checked for certain drugs. And that tests only gave those results. But when they actually tested him, they found a whole bunch of stuff. So, is it okay if I sit down? It's a little hard with my hand. Checking is all about pass and fail. That's what we are expected to do most of our lives. Checking is not testing. Testing is about how does it work. It always has been. Software explorers, yes, that's what we do. We explore how does it work beyond the requirement. Now, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about the history of quality control and assurance. Most of the practices Agile, Six Sigma, Scrum, these are methodologies that were originally born in the manufacturing industry. We borrowed them. Manufacturing is all about, they already have an idea, they've tested it out, now they're manufacturing it, and they're building it in batches over and over. And maybe they're trying to reduce some costs, some time, some efficiencies, they're smoothing it out. That's what they're doing most of the time. And for that sake, they implemented quality controls to make sure certain checks are passed. We took those methodologies and implemented for software. Software, we are not creating the same thing over and over again. We are always creating something new. We will never know what we are getting till we actually get it. So now let's talk a little bit about the waterfall. By the way, I don't have any animosity towards waterfall. I actually have a lot of respect for it, because from nothing, waterfall came. In waterfall, we gathered requirements, we started developing, and when the developer was developing, we were expected to write test cases to the requirements. And then when the product was ready, we were testing the requirements using these test cases. Just like in manufacturing, we have a checklist, we are going through it. We are taught to not have any work to do while the developer is developing. So that's the job we were given. And contrary to the popular belief, no, waterfall did not introduce catching bug. The main issue with waterfall was planning paralysis, and that's the reason it went out of fashion. And also, yeah, it's kind of heavy and really, really spendy. So then we got Agile. Agile is all about building little bits and pieces here and there, and whatever you can do, whatever you can make the customer happy, bring it to the market fast. So it worked, and everybody started doing it. But when it came to day-to-day activity, when the developer is developing, I am still as a QA, still expected to write the test case so that I can verify the requirement. Nothing has changed in my life. Testing a requirement, really, especially the user stories. We have to write test cases to verify the product, the test cases that are based on the requirement to verify the product. And let me remind you, the requirements do not have any information about what APIs are we using. databases are we connecting with? What other integrations are we supporting? Nothing. They're pretty much vague. They're abstract like. That's how they're supposed to be. And we are supposed to use these test cases to support the product through its life. Have you ever tried to execute somebody's test cases? Did you want to marry them and kill them silently? I have. So this is what we're set up with. This is my personal and also like not opinion, experience. I always call my products xenomorphs. Yes, the movies, they're terrible, but like in real life, they're adorable. No matter how meticulous your requirement is, how clear it is, even if the product meets the requirement, the markups and several other things, it is always a xenomorph. You will never get what you were expecting initially, because thanks to nature of things are changing all the time. So sometimes the acceptance criteria is in the comments. Sometimes the acceptance criteria is in some other ticket. Sometimes it's in an email chain. Sometimes it's in a discussion. Sometimes, more than a few times, it's in somebody's head. And we have to deal with it. And because of all this churn and drama, what happens? Issues do happen. This is what happens when I log a bug. And no problem. The developer understood it differently. I understood it differently. This is fine. But this happens. My question is, like, if your requirement was like so beautifully written, so awesomely understandable, why do you need an extra person to tell you your requirement was met? Why do I need to fight? Why you need a position to fight for the quality of the product just so everybody hates them? Now, we need to talk about bugs. I do not have a love-hate relationship with bugs. I only have a love relationship with bugs. They are Pokemon to me. Gotta catch them all. They're adorable. There's so much you can learn from them. I'm like, just like animals and Pokemon, they look similar, but Pokemon are slightly different. So my bugs are slightly different than the actual features that we wanted initially. But some bugs are like, they're just cute ones. They're fine. They're harmless. Some you'd have to deal with them right away. Some you all have seen it, or at least 50% of you have seen it. Don't deny it. You have seen ecosystems built around them, right? Yes, Johnny's nodding. And some are so deadly, you may lose your job. Not for missing them, for finding them, right? Let me ask you the number one reason for bugs. Talk, people. What do you think is the number one reason for bugs? I love you. Number two reason for bugs. Yes, number three reason. Yes, it's always the requirements. I think the top 5 are requirements because, like, what's the reason for divorce? It's a marriage. So yeah, what's the reason for a bug is a requirement. Number 1, it's like brainless. And like the top 5 are requirements because they're written so poorly. They're not looking at the whole product and so many other criteria. Let me tell you some of my experience. I hope one of the projects I worked on, I saw like, whatever data I was putting in, it was showing up in production. And I saw it after 2 days. And then I was like, oh my God, this is happening. This is like magic or something. And the leadership was like, no. We have shared databases. So that's the reason it's happening. Just be careful with the staging environment. And I'm like, if you know it, just fix it. Like, we have to go in and fix it. We have projects to work on. We don't have time to, just don't make noise. That's what they told. So what I learned from this experience is they do not know how to use QA. They seriously don't. One of the projects I worked on, this amazing instantly promoted director, Yeah, I don't like him. He's a nice guy in person, but like terrible, terrible manager. He had the rule that like we're not going to fix any bugs. We're just going to focus on features. Why should we fix bugs? It doesn't give us any money. So there, and on top of that, to get the product faster using Scrum and Agile, any way to the market thing philosophy, leaving the rest of it behind. They did not have any strategies in place. So the technical that accumulated so much over time, the product became unstable. I kept logging my bugs though. And I just waited in the shadows. And then one day the director is like, what's the point of having a QA if you're not advocating for the quality of the product? I mean, I logged my bugs and you give specific instructions to not, work on the bugs. What else can I do? So yeah, from this experience, I understood I'm a bug catcher as well as a scapegoat. And there were several instances. And if you ever worked at Amazon, like QA are designated scapegoats. Yeah. So one of the products I worked on, I mean, I just joined the company and I'm like logged in. Wrong password. Oh, you threw an error message. And when I opened a new tab, I was logged in. I'm like, you're logging me in with the wrong password. What's happening? They're like, you know what? This feature was developed several sprints ago. If it was not logged then, we're not going to log it. We're not going to fix it now. And it was not fixed for like, I don't know, 6 months or something till we got a new QA manager. Doing us any favors. And yes, that organization was filled with Scrum, and you're not doing Scrum correctly. I know Scrum. I'm just a fair paralegal, but I know Scrum. Sorry, I have a little bit of. Thank you. In one of the projects I worked on as the QA manager, she's been working on the same company for 30 years or something. She asked me to test something. I sat down for 5 minutes and I was like, it's a broken build. And I told the developers, and the developers were like, it'll take us 3 hours to give you a proper build. So I was like, I have nothing to do for 3 hours. She was like, no, but keep testing. Whatever you find, you can retest it. I'm like, it's a broken build. Whatever I find is a false negative. It's a false bug. It's not real. She didn't understand that. She was like, no matter what, we need to keep testing. She tried to empower me. What I learned is don't hire non-tech people as QA. That happens way too often. In one of the projects I was working on, it was not my product, different product. What I saw was the passwords were not encrypted. Credit cards were like, you can read everything. And on top of that, they copied everything from production without scrubbing. So I immediately logged a couple of bugs for it, and notified the team members as a good, another team member. They were like, they closed those bugs. I'm like, what? Your passwords, everybody can see them, and it's happening in production also. I confirmed it with the DBA, and they were like, but the requirements didn't say about it, so it's not a bug. I lost the process battle. I learned don't argue with idiots. And this is my favorite company till date. I worked only for briefly, but still I was working with the guys. I was working with such smart people like you. So the first week I joined, I logged 108 bugs. 108 bugs between 4 products. None of the team members flinched. They were like, thank you, Srilu. Thank you. You're making us better. Now we can fix all of these things. And looking at this, like, prioritizing and, triaging them, we learned like, hey, we need to improve our branching strategy. We need to improve our unit tests. We need to improve our coding standards. And after several months, it came to a stage where like we find like, I wouldn't even compare product quality based on bugs, please. I never do that. It came down to like 4 or 5 bugs. And then one day the CEO calls my manager and is like, hey, we don't have any bugs. We don't need you. Goodbye, QA. He dissolved the QA team. The day after we were let go, the main website, it went down. And I was like dying because, no matter what you pay me or not, it's my baby. Okay, I want to make it better. I don't want to break it contrary to the popular belief. So I was waiting, and my manager was like, no, let them fall flat on the face. I don't care. This is what they do after everything we did to them. I called one of the developers and like, hey, Aaron, this is happening. And he was able to say, learn from that mistake? No, because we are not octopus. We don't learn from our experiences and mistakes. We just do them better. Okay, I don't even want to go over this slide. Automation is oxymoron. Darling, you've done a wonderful job in your in your speech. So we've already talked about this. Automation overemphasis is happening and shifting left, and all these things are happening too much. And yeah, I'm not even going to talk about this slide. I'm going to recap. So we are bug catchers, scapegoats, and final step in the process. We're holding up the process, right? Right? We have agile challenges. We have limited scope because we're living in the tickets, and we have lack of empowerment. And automation over reliance because like the companies think like we have automation testing, we have everything. Automation is not testing, it's checking. And process confusion and lack of standardization. We talked about the test in the bugs, like we can't understand what each other's documentations. So, and I also want to throw in some world experiences before I show you my beautiful product owner in test, and he is very beautiful. So we know this, right? This happened, and this is the lesson I learned. Do not skip common sense testing. Do not skip security testing. Please, it is like very, very, very important. If you don't have the expertise, bring in an expert, talk to some people, get this resolved like yesterday. Oh, this is my favorite one. Remember, like this happened and we all talked about integration testing. You know, the leg fold, one team tested the leg fold, one team tested the landing of the, Mars Polar Lander. But like on the ground, both of them didn't function together. And that's the reason it got lost. Like, I don't know, a couple of million, 30 million was lost. Test the whole damn thing. This is the lesson we should have learned from this one. No, several of my colleagues, they loved this phone. It was so beautiful and shiny. The lessons to be learned is like, don't be in such a hurry because like all this safe and Scrum and everything are like, you have to get to the market, you have to get to the market, you have to get to the market, and you're falling flat on your face and you're taking everybody down with you and stressing out your teams who are developing the products. Right? Yeah, know your product before boasting about it. I mean, like, have you guys ever done, like, not now, we stopped doing that, but like, 80 years ago, we used to like, you work at that company, I'm going to find bugs and like post it on our blogs. We did that, right? So, know your product before boasting about it. Oh, this is from 2022 or 21, 22, I believe. So this thing happened. This is a working product. This gas line software was working properly. And then the Russian hackers, they just like, held it for ransomware. And they were very, very nice. After the first ransom, ask, once they got the 5 million, they let go. What we need to learn from working product does not mean your job is done. As long as it's alive, you do need to freaking support it. People don't get that. Wouldn't it be very nice if we lived in a world where we are not bogged down by politics or some framework or some process and like tickets and stuff, and just given the product, I mean, like, and the access, and you pretty much half of the people in this room, we can take it apart and put it back together and enjoy doing it, right? Don't hide it. You enjoy it. I know it. So introducing the product owner in test. We need oh yeah, there is a reason for that, but if you ask me separately, I will tell you why I used it. They need a framework that focuses only on testing, not in bits and pieces, not in little things, not in acceptance criteria checking. Any idiot can do that. No, we are experts in software, not domains, not some requirements. So that's what we need to be allowed to do. As a product owner in test, we will work for the organization, but independent of the engineering team, focusing only on the product. But we will have responsibilities. First thing I want to talk about qualifications. This is my personal experience. I may be wrong, but hear me out. I believe a person should need, 5 years as a QA or an estet as a developer to know how software works. They need to have the hands-on experience. They need to, they need to know programming. They don't need to be experts, but they do need to understand how programming works. They need to be able to explain how software works. Hey, I put in this thing here, it goes into a database or into an API or into another system. They need to be able to explain those things. And also documentation, they need to be explained it in documentation very, very clearly without, breaking any rules or exposing the company, which is actually pretty easy. And not exposing, not exposingly documenting. These are the preliminary qualifications. Now, the pot, I call them the pot because it's okay. Sorry. The pot has 3 areas of responsibility. Number 1 is towards the product, 2 is production release, and 3rd is towards the organization, because the organization also needs some learning to do. When testing the product, they test the product, they document the product, and they also demonstrate the product, and they recommend if more exploration is needed. And if it's a huge product, yeah, they need to delegate out the tasks and also do other tests. So before testing, this has happened to me in at least 3 or 4 different organizations. Even if I'm working in the organization, if I'm on a new project, again, I have to work all over again. So we need to put in you want me to work on something, I need an entry criteria. Either you need to give it to me or show me a way to get it myself. Access to the product. You'll be surprised. Access to the product. Walk through the code. Tell me how many unit tests did you write? Not how many, what kind of unit tests did you write for what functionality? That will give me an understanding about hey, how many more functional tests should I add here? If we add a couple of more unit tests, it'll be a little bit more stronger. I can go light on my automation. So all those things like component tests, integration tests. Yes, those need to be talked to the product owner. And overview of the product should be done by the product manager, product owner person. Not just giving a bunch of tickets and be like, hey, test this. No, give an overview like a human to human kind of an overview. Access to the databases and APIs is required. List of services, whatever is known should be provided. If any special data like provisioned users or specially created data that the pod cannot do it themselves needs to be provided or acknowledged. That's when they get into testing. And it is their job to test, and they can use whatever way they want to test it. They can test however they want to. One set of tests do not fit every application. So they can choose how to test their application to the best of the, of their knowledge. When they're done testing, they are supposed to deliver a bunch of documentation so that the organization can take it and understand their own software in the form of check cases. I'll talk about this in a little bit, issues and wikis. I call them check cases because we've called them test cases for way too long. And I recently got a SAFe certification. And they are just revising every term and terminology into trains and Jeep drivers, whatever. Okay, so I was like, why shouldn't we revise our terminology? We're still in the initial phases of creating software. Oh, more is going to be happening in the next century or so. So these are check cases for pass and fail. Why don't we start calling them check cases instead of test cases? Because they're not testing anything. So that it's apparent to everybody on the team that we're checking for something that was already tested. And in 2015, I presented a paper called "So You Think You Can Write a Test Case," where I offer like examples of how to write effective test cases that anybody in the world can understand as long as they know the language. And I gave a life cycle for a test case. So this is the life cycle for a test case. So they need to provide product-based test cases, check cases. We need to stop doing that. And issues. And also we need to start encouraging organizations to think of issues as opportunities to improve. They're nothing to be afraid of. They're Pokemon. They're not bugs. As I saw is like whenever I sat down with the team and in the beginning or in the middle of the project and helped them build a probability impact matrix, and I showed them like, hey, all the 60 issues that I logged, and you think you're such a worthless developer? No, they're like, no, that's nothing. You can take them off in like one branch. So this really, really helps. And eventually this probability impact matrix will evolve as the project and the product matures. And the team and and also especially the product people will learn from it about how to prioritize things. So it helps everybody. Yes, yes. No, sorry, sorry. They're Pokemon. There's no difference. No, no, no. We can talk about the history of the bugs in a little bit. Product demo. The product does need to be demoed, not like, we do the sprint demo, like, how you wanted this, we're giving you this, are you happy, are you happy? No, not that kind of a demo. Like you have the documentation of the test cases and the issues and everything, so use them in your demo and explain to them, hey, I input information like this. This is how the database is saving. This is how it is storing. This is how it's processing. You have to be able to show that. And to the product team as well as the engineering team, with or without projects. And both times the engineering team was like, what, this is how we're doing it? We could have done it differently. We already have code to do this in a different way. And they started pairing up better and working better together. And the product also understood like, hey, this is how the software is being built. This is how I'm going to start writing my ticket. This is how I'm going to prioritize my requirements. And that actually became an even better thing than writing better requirements, because that's not really possible. The extra tasks when it comes to a product are, you can recommend more testing, like, hey, add more unit tests, more component tests, more security testing is needed. I'm not an expert, please bring in a security expert. Add performance tests, and yes, also add functional tests. That's the automation test. And also delegate tasks if the product is very, very large. One more thing about this is the product owner in test, he is responsible, or she, they are responsible for one product. They may have multiple products. That's fine if they're like small chitty products, that's okay. But two product owners are not responsible for one product. That is not going to happen. Just like a product owner, I see value in doing that. I see value in having one person be responsible and make decisions for a product. That's the reason I've decided this. Now, when it comes to the organization also needs to be taught a few things. Number one, keep your production data very, very private, very, very clean. Do not let anybody touch it. All those things. If you're copying any of the data, that's fine. Scrub it, scrub the heck out of it. Just because it's your employee data does not mean you can use their information. I've seen too many things. And also, don't put in fake data just so you can verify it in production. Those are stupid things we do. Don't do that. Sorry, I already talked to you about production data. Standardize certain features. I mean, like we've all seen like the field validation on the registration page does not match on the login page, and then that does not log in on the profile page. And when you try to do a reset password, what happens, right? So things like that encourage the organization to think these things, set the criteria for these common features ahead of time. Understand your integrating modules and such, like common features, and standardize them so that all the teams can use them and live happily ever after instead of reinventing the wheel over and over. One of the advantages I see in doing this, I've been able to do this in startup companies. And when I did that, what I saw is like you are making less decisions. Less decision making means less issues, less headache, less fighting with one another. So this helps. And most of the decisions are made. So you can go ahead and start building any amount of products that you want. Standardize lower environments. Not all organizations, but some, even the big ones, I've seen this. They don't standardize the lower environments. It's like an afterthought. Like, okay, we're supposed to release in like a month. Okay, now we'll think about the lower environment. Stop testing in the sandbox. Oh, those things happen. Instead, if we standardize the lower environments, name them consistently across the organization, it also makes people to like, work from one project to another. That is not my main focus. My main focus is like when you're doing integration testing or integration efforts or anything like that, it becomes really, really easy. You don't have to keep explaining in 1,000 emails over and over again. Do this one little improvement and, like a time saves 9 kind of a thing. Yeah, prioritize your lower environments. Set your releases. Releases are also a big thing. Set your releases, name the releases so that we can identify it by the product or the project or the team or whatever. Keep things consistent. Set expectations that code freezes are necessary. I mean, some companies don't need it. I worked in a company, a badass company, but that's only for that company. Every other company, no, they're not badass. They need code freezes. And a lot of companies, their stakeholders, they need pre-release sign-off agreements and post-release sign-off verification. For example, like I said, like they were one of the companies, it's a medical company. They were willing to put fake data just so they can test it in the production environments for their satisfaction. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. So things like that, you do need to educate. And MVP 1 requirements. This is something I snuck in. I feel like, the Scrum, the Agile, they're saying like, just do something, just do something. I call it the do it before you know it frameworks. Instead of that, put in some effort to understand your technical requirements, put in some effort to understand your non-technical requirements, and, make an effort to understand them. And for example, setting up your lower environment, understanding what kind of database is suitable for this one, because one of the very big application that I worked on, it was literally hosted on a laptop in production. Yeah, because they needed to do it on the fly. And it's really hard to take it off of and this is like an ancient laptop too. So there are several instances like this. So put in the effort to, pay attention to your technical details, what you need. So not responsibilities of the pod. You like pod, right? They're not bug finders. Bugs are a byproduct of testing. They are not the result of testing. The result of testing should always be a check case. They're not acceptance criteria checkers. Everybody in a team should be acceptance criteria checkers if there is one. Overall quality of the product is not the responsibility of the pod, because they can make recommendations if the team decides like, hey, I don't want to do it. It's not theirs, but it's documented that they have recommended it. So, I always say like, my biggest asset is me. Being nice. They're not the decision maker for the product. For example, if they think some feature or something is not right, but the rest of the team or the product especially decides like, no, this is right, this is what we want to do, they should let go. They should not fight too hard. They're not gatekeepers of the release. If any of the features want to be released to production, despite of having some issues or reservations, that's fine. It's the whole team that decides. That's okay. They're not domain experts. I see too many people wanting a domain expert thinking, oh, we'll have less bugs. No, they're not domain experts. They're software experts. They're not QA managers. We already established that. Oh, I'm so sick and tired. Sorry. No, some of them are amazing, but yeah. Why should companies care for the pot? Well, like there are several, like we talked about, like all these frameworks. They're like, we need to get the product to the market fast, fast, fast. Well, and I'll be honest, we also have to show our value. Like, hey, when I test this, when I give you information, you are able to improve yourself. And I'm going to put my stamp of approval on certain things. When I put my stamp of approval on certain things, you can go advertise it. You can go advertise it that my product is so safe. It was tested by so and so. It was checked off for like so and so features for like a UI, ADA testing, UX, anything, security, authentication. When we get to a stage where we are able to also prove our worth in this framework, our stamp of approval will be very, very valued. That's when the companies will value us. The focus right now is all on the process and getting it faster, 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 cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. The focus should be on the quality of the product. And quality, again, I can't tell you like what quality is. It always differs from product to product. So yeah.